Today's number is 600 billion. That is in US dollars the rough size of OpenAI's future compute commitments, the data center and chip bills the company has already signed up to pay for. Per the Wall Street Journal, OpenAI's chief financial officer has privately warned her colleagues she may not be able to fund all of it, down from a targeted float as recently as February of $1.4 trillion. Hang on to that number for a moment. We'll get to it here momentarily. Well, it's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. We're almost there. Yesterday, I told you the trial of the year was about to start. It did. Elon Musk took the stand. Opening arguments landed. And boy, did some haymakers fly. But about an hour after we wrapped taping yesterday morning, the Wall Street Journal published a story that changed the running order. OpenAI's chief financial officer privately warning her own colleagues that the company may not be able to fund $600 billion of compute bills it has already signed up to pay, disagreeing in front of those colleagues with the chief executive officer about whether to spend more or spend less. By yesterday's close, Oracle was off as much as 7.5%. SoftBank dropped 10% in Asia. Nvidia, Broadcom, and AMD all fell 3 to 5%. The NASDAQ was down more than a percent at midday. If your retirement accounts and 401ks looked a little off, well, there might be a reason behind it, and it has to do with the AI industry. Yesterday was decoupling day, and today is the reality check. I'm Don Michalik, and this is your morning intelligence for Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. All right, here's what we've got today, today's preview. In the lead story, well, the Wall Street Journal has reported and they put the AI CapEx story under a fresh microscope as of yesterday. And we'll talk about what the disagreement between OpenAI's chief financial officer and chief executive officer means for the tool a lot of you use every single day. In the rundown, day one of the Musk versus OpenAI trial. Opening arguments, Musk on the stand, we got it all. Google signed a classified Pentagon contract for Gemini yesterday, one day after 600 of its own employees handed Sundar Pichai a letter saying don't do it. And Florida's Attorney General expanded the criminal probe of OpenAI to a second case. In today's Deep Cut, the cleanest data yet on which junior workers are losing jobs to AI and which are not. If you're early in your career or if you manage someone who's early in their career, well, this segment is directly for you. And we'll close with 15 apps you already probably use, plugged directly into one chatbot. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right. Yesterday morning, the Wall Street Journal published a piece that landed across CNBC, Bloomberg, Fortune, and Yahoo Finance within an hour. Here is the version of the story that has been reported and that OpenAI publicly disputes. So I'll go ahead and name both here. Well, per the journal, OpenAI has missed multiple monthly revenue targets so far in 2026 alone. It also missed an internal milestone of 1 billion weekly active ChatGPT users by year end of 2025. Google's Gemini surged late last year. Anthropic's Claude is gaining in coding in enterprise. Those external pressures have hit the model that funded the entire AI CapEx story as of today. But here's the part that actually moved the markets. OpenAI's chief financial officer, Sarah Frier, has reportedly warned her colleagues in private that the company may not be able to fund roughly $600 billion in future compute commitments. That number is the size of the contracts OpenAI has already signed to Oracle, to Microsoft, to all the other ones, to buy AI chips and data center capacity in the coming years. 600 billion. Down, and if you want to hear this twice, down from a targeted float as recently as February of $1.4 trillion. Per the same reporting, the disagreement is now public inside the company. They've aired their dirty laundry whether they wanted to or not. Fryer wants spending discipline. Sam Altman wants to accelerate spending, and he wants to get in a 2026 IPO as well. They issued a joint statement yesterday afternoon calling the report, quote, ridiculous and clickbait and saying the business is, quote, firing on all cylinders. They did not, however, address the specific misses. Some editorial honesty here. OpenAI denies the framing, and I'm going to name both sides. The market read the joint statement and simply disagreed with OpenAI. Oracle has the biggest no compute partnership with OpenAI, roughly $300 billion dollars over the next 5 years. And Oracle was the ticker that took the deepest cut yesterday. SoftBank, OpenAI's biggest backer, was off 10% in Asia. So, why does this matter? Why is this our lead story? Well, if you use ChatGPT in any tier whatsoever, today nothing really changes for you. Let's be honest about that. The product still works. The question the story actually raises is the question every other story in today's episode is stemming from. When does the bill actually come due? And what happens when it does? With that in mind, here's a question I would like you to sit with this morning. The AI tool you opened today, what is the price you're willing to pay for it tomorrow if its provider had to raise prices just to stay in business? Not because the product changed itself or even that it got better, but because the math has finally caught up with them. The bottom line here, well, the most used AI company on earth is, per the Wall Street Journal, missing its own targets. Its chief financial officer is obviously worried, and it's been reported that she is worried. Its chief executive officer wants to continue spending and spending faster. And the index funds in your retirement account already voted yesterday. If you have been wondering whether the AI boom has a ceiling, well, the chief financial officer of the company at the center of it apparently wonders the same thing. All right, let's go ahead and transition to today's rundown, and we'll start with our first story here. Yesterday in Oakland, day one of the Musk versus OpenAI trial. CNBC, NPR, Reuters, and Bloomberg had all covered it, as well as other outlets as well. Here's the quick summary. A 9-person advisory jury was seated on Monday. Judge Yvonne Gonzalez Rogers is presiding over the case. Of the 26 claims Musk's team had originally filed, only 2 actually survived to the court date: unjust enrichment and breach of charitable trust. Musk is seeking up to $134 billion and Sam Altman's removal as CEO. Opening arguments crystallized both sides into one sentence, really, each. Musk's lead attorney, Stephen Mollo, quote, "We are here today because the defendants in this case stole a charity." Then the apology. A nonprofit museum can open a gift shop, but the museum store can't loot the museum and sell the Picassos. OpenAI's attorney, William Sabat, quote, "We are here today because Mr. Musk didn't get his way at OpenAI. He showed the jury a 2017 email from former board member Siobhan Zillis discussing for-profit restructuring options." Musk himself then testified for nearly 2 hours, if you can believe it. Elon Musk talking for 2 straight hours. He told the jury OpenAI was created specifically to counter Google's AI dominance and warned, quote, "We don't want to have a Terminator outcome." Before the jury entered, Judge Rogers scolded Musk for his scam Altman social media posts and threatened a gag order. So what? Well, if the advisory jury finds for Musk the structure that lets OpenAI accept billions in for-profit investment while operating from a nonprofit charter could be unwound. That is the structure your ChatGPT subscription pays into. The verdict, when it actually comes, will rewrite parts of the rulebook entirely. All right, our second story in the rundown. Well, the Washington Post broke this one actually on Sunday night, but I'm covering it today. The information confirmed on Monday, and Google signed on it yesterday. This past Sunday, more than 600 Google employees, including 20 plus directors, senior directors, VPs, and DeepMind researchers, sent an open letter to Sundar Pichai with the subject, "Don't sign the classified Pentagon AI deal." The letter cited concerns about lethal autonomous weapons and mass surveillance. And it included one sentence that tells you exactly where this is going. Quote, "We do not want to fill the gap left by Anthropic." Anthropic, a thread we've been tracking over the last 6 weeks as it relates to the Pentagon, was Pentagon blacklisted in March for refusing classified use in everything that is cited in this paper. 24 hours after the letter went public, Google signed. The contract allows Gemini to be used for, quote, any lawful government purpose in classified work. It does say no domestic mass surveillance or autonomous weapons without, quote, suitable human supervision and control. Legal experts told the Washington Post those clauses are not necessarily legally binding, which should concern everyone. The pattern echoes 2018 a little bit when 4,000 Google employees protested a Pentagon contract called Project Maven, and Google walked away from it. Yesterday, with more directors and even more VPs signing, well, Google signed the deal anyways. So what? Well, if you use Google Workspace, Gmail, maybe even a Pixel phone, Gemini, even, the company that makes those tools just signed a classified military AI contract over the explicit objection of its own engineers. That's a values data point, not a doomsday data point, but a values data point. Use it the next time your team is comparing Gemini, Claude, and ChatGPT on a vendor shortlist. Here is another introspection beat, if I may. If the company that builds the AI on your phone signs a contract its own engineers wrote a letter against, does that change which AI you choose at work and at home? It may not, but it's now a question worth asking out loud. All right, our third story in today's rundown. Florida Attorney General James Olthmeyer announced Monday that he is expanding the criminal investigation of OpenAI to a second case. WUSF, Axios, Tampa Bay, and NPR all had it in their coverage. A quick recap for anyone catching up on this because we did cover this last Thursday, but this is the expansion of the original case. In case one, the FSU campus attack earlier this year, where the accused asked ChatGPT how to fire firearms, the busiest times on campus, and how many victims a story needs to draw national media coverage. Case number two in the expansion covers the University of South Florida double murder. A man was charged with 2 counts of first degree murder for killing 2 doctoral students, allegedly consulting ChatGPT about how to dispose of human remains. This is the first nationwide attempt to hold an AI company's executives criminally accountable for actions taken using their software, and is now a 2 case investigation by a state attorney general. So, what? Well, every AI company you use is now reading the Florida indictment and rewriting its trust and safety playbook, or at least they should be at this point. The reason this matters to you is, well, really, the next time you ask an AI a sensitive question, even a benign sensitive question, the response is going to be maybe a little bit different if they take this seriously. Maybe it's more cautious, maybe it's even overly cautious. I don't know. But the tools are actually changing in front of us and are getting external pressure from folks like James Althmeyer to do it. And this case is probably going to be one of the driving factors behind it. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick beat here. And if you're enjoying Morning Intelligence, if you could do me a quick favor, I'd really appreciate it. Send this episode to at least one person today, just one if you're feeling ambitious about it. Send it to them in a text message, send it to them in an email, LinkedIn DM, Slack message, team message, whatever makes the most sense for you. If you share this episode with one person, you help the podcast grow. And I would genuinely appreciate it if you did that. All right, let's go ahead and get into today's deep cut. Earlier this month, Stanford published a study. The Washington Post built an interactive on top of it. CNN ran the headlines. And the data is the cleanest answer yet to a question this audience has been asking out loud since the day of GPT-3 dropping. Here's the question. Is AI actually taking jobs? Well, here's what the data actually says. Software developer jobs for workers aged 22 to 25 have fallen approximately 20% since late 2022. A reminder, in late 2022, that is the moment generative AI entered the mainstream. Software engineers who are age 30 and up, well, their jobs grew between 6 and 12% in the same time frame. Stanford's data flags similar age divergence in call centers, which were down about 15% for the youngest of workers and in accounting, marketing, and even customer service. Here is the theory the Stanford team put forward. Junior workers come in with textbook knowledge. AI is really good at replicating textbook knowledge, and it does it basically perfectly. Senior workers carry tacit knowledge, how this company does things, who you can ask, what to do when the system breaks down at 4 p.m. on a Friday, things that AI can't replicate as easily. So the line is not between humans and AI, the line is actually between knowledge and tacit knowledge. And some editorial honesty here, Stanford is not the only voice in this. The Economic Innovation Group has pushed back, finding that younger workers in fields most exposed to AI may actually be doing better than peers in fields with low AI exposure. Contested data point. But the cleanest single data set we have is on the question that we're asking right now. Oh, why is this worth your time? Well, one more stat here. 52% of Gen Z worry about AI taking their job. If you are in that 52%, the Stanford data is not telling you to panic, it's telling you which side of the line to be on. And here's yet another introspective question I should could probably be asking you. The skills you bring to your job, how many of them are textbook and how many of them are tacit? The textbook ones are what you learned in school and certifications and tutorials and courses. The tacit ones are what you learned by surviving the third week of your first job. AI is good at the book knowledge and it's not so good at the tacit knowledge that you build over time. So, if you are 23 right now, the Stanford data is the case for spending the next year stockpiling tacit knowledge, the kind of know how that lives in conversations and hallways and at the water cooler. If you manage someone who's 23 right now, the Stanford data is the case for putting that person in those situations so they can grow their tacit knowledge. The takeaway here, the 20% drop is not for everyone in tech. It's not weighted equally. It is for the workers whose skills overlap most with what AI can already do, that textbook knowledge. The jobs are not going, they're moving toward whatever AI simply can't replicate right now. All right. Before we sign off, we're going to close with the most consumer friendly thing the AI race has probably shipped this month, and it's not from OpenAI. Last Friday, Anthropic added 15 consumer app connections to Claude, as in 15 apps you probably already use plugged directly into the chatbot. 9 to 5 Mac and 9 to 5 Google have the rollout. The list includes Spotify, Uber, Uber Eats, Instacart, Booking.com, TripAdvisor, Resi, StubHub, TaskRabbit, Thumbtack, AllTrails, Audible, TurboTax, Credit Karma, and Viator. What that means in practice is this. Ask Claude to build you a playlist from what you've been actually listening to, and it'll pull your Spotify history. Ask Claude to book a ride to the airport, and it'll book an Uber. Ask Claude to plan dinner, and it'll talk to Resi and Instacart. Ask a tax question, TurboTax and Credit Karma are on the call. All in chat, no app switching whatsoever. Anthropic was specific about two things in their announcement. No paid placements whatsoever, no sponsored answers. It's there for you to connect, disconnect whenever you want. If you've been waiting for the moment AI moves out of the inbox and into the kitchen, into the gym, into the airport, into the tax form, even, well, that happened late last Friday. All right, for tomorrow, a couple different teasers here. Four of the five biggest tech companies on earth report earnings after the close tonight. Microsoft, Alphabet, Meta, Amazon. Combined 2026 AI capex is on the line, somewhere between 645 and $700 billion, if you can believe that. Yesterday's Wall Street Journal put the question on the table. Tonight prints the answers that we'll all be paying attention to when Wall Street closes. And we'll make sure to have the read tomorrow. And that's your morning intelligence for Wednesday, April 29th, 2026. If you like what you heard, hit subscribe from wherever you're listening. Share this episode with that one friend who keeps asking you, hey, what's going on in the world of AI? You know who they are. I'm Don Michalik. Thank you so much for listening and have a great rest of your Wednesday.